I am Jason Gore for ThatShelf.com, and we're here to talk about George Miller's Furiosa.
Big shelf.
So here we are at the Cannes International Film Festival. Look, there's the Palais. There's some water behind me. I'm about to leave and go get a kebab, because that's what one does in France. If you're not eating here, you're really not having any time at the festival. And believe it or not, I have some time between now and my next movie. But we are here to talk about the much anticipated Furiosa by George Miller, the prequel to Mad Max Fury Road. The way that this works is that when he was developing Fury Road, he kind of wrote backstories for the cast and crew to actually understand sort of where they got to, what Max's journey was and what Furiosa's journey was. The original obviously played by Charlize Theron and Tom Hardy. And that played Cannes, did amazingly well. And one of the brilliant things about Fury Road is it took all of the nonsense and the post-apocalyptic craziness of the Mad Max world and distilled it in its most pure form. I described it at the time, oh here, speaking of Australia, got a guy with a didgeridoo. Distilled it into its most pure form. I describe it as being like the truck chase in Raiders of the Lost Ark, but for 2 hours. It's absolutely breathless. And not only is Fury Road one of the great action movies of all time, it's one of the great films of the century, full stop. It's such a pure and exhilarating masterpiece of cinematic craft in 3D. To quote George Miller, it is creamy. It is a stunning, stunning achievement. I've watched it dozens of times. It continues to hold up. The performances are great. The cinematography is great. And so why am I sitting here as my gimbal's not behaving? There we go. As I'm sitting here going on and on and on about Fury Road, because this one doesn't fare nearly as well in comparison. The fact of the matter is that Furiosa has a much harder job to do and executes it in a way which is simply less satisfying. The closest that comes to mind immediately, and I've used this metaphor before, is you look at 2010. 2010 came out, the film, if you haven't seen it, it's pretty good. It's a good sci-fi film, got some good stories. My God, it's full of stars, both acting-wise and also the line of dialogue. And yet, compared to 2001, it's kind of ridiculous. We get that a little bit in the Indiana Jones films. I mean, you have Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is just so monstrously better than what came after, that the other films are good and fun and rollicking, but compared to the original, it's almost unfair. Jaws. You know, Jaws 2 isn't so bad. Jaws 3 is a mess. But the way that it's structured compared to the original, you're only going to get so much stuff out of a sequel. It's a very rare thing indeed for sequels to actually work, which is what made the fourth Mad Max Fury Road such an unbelievable surprise. It took him a dozen years to actually put it together. He storyboarded the hell out of it. The craft was impeccable, and it felt new and fresh and exhilarating, and an amazing collision from a filmmaker, a pioneering filmmaker, one of the great pioneering digital filmmakers, but also somebody with an incredible analog grit. And that's what gave Fury Road its absolute punch. Furiosa, on the other hand, feels more the same. We're getting stuff we've seen before. The set pieces, the action moments, all of that stuff are great and thrilling. The desert looks wonderful. But the augmentation and the implementation is less integrated than what we would want. I have zero problem whatsoever about doing this kind of hybridization where you shoot the hell out of stuff practically and then you augment digitally. And it's the way that everything works from hell. All the films that go on and on and on and on about practical effects, every Tom Cruise film ever, every Christopher Nolan film that he's done has some sort of digital augmentation, wire removal, etc. to actually make the stuff actually work. So for something like this where it's explicit that we're getting some CGI, some practical effects, is fine. This is a comic book nature, has sort of a zaniness to it all that was always there. But because the analog grit is less evident in some ways, in some of the composition, some of the elements. It's less dirty, it's less filthy than even Fury Road was. And the scope of it makes some things just not feel quite as grounded, even when it's actually done through digital augmentation. It doesn't really work. That's a strict technical basis. Performance-wise, this is that classic example where the film is answering questions we didn't need answered. What I loved about Fury Road is, yeah, there was Max, he was there. I didn't remember, I haven't gone back and rewatched the Mel Gibson thing in years. It didn't matter. In a world where we had everything being cinematic world building, we had a film that just kind of threw you in. For 45 minutes, it did not stop. And Furiosa is the opposite. It's this epic story of a young girl who is in this bucolic Eden-like space. She gets caught up in circumstance and gets taken away. Her mother goes to rescue her, and that's where the story sort of breaks off. So honestly, as soon as the first edit happened, I'm like, oh, I guess we're not just going to be living in the moment like we did before. We always knew that it was going to be epic, but it's actually a considerable amount of screen time before sort of young Furiosa gets replaced by Anya Taylor-Joy. There's lots of echoes to the other movies, tons of echoes, obviously Fury Road, but also the original films. It's unabashedly Australian, the accent's all over the place. People unapologetically speaking Australian, in part because of Chris Hemsworth as the lead. And again, he's an interesting baddie. They try to contextualize him. They try to give him more impact. And in some ways, that's way, way, way less effective than the Immortan Joe. It's just like, here's a guy in a devil's mask who's trying to kill everybody, and we don't even care why. We just know he's living in a world where these Zeftig women are like producing milk and these crazy models are there being kidnapped. And one thing that really, really sort of the film struggles with is the visual palette. It just feels not as rich, not as refined as the other one. Obviously, camera technology has changed. The way that it's done is changed fundamentally. And it lacks the compositional precision that the first one does. It's my understanding that in the 12 years it took to make Fury Road, he storyboarded the hell out of it. Like a graphic novel, every frame. The reason it works so amazingly well in 3D is because your eye is being guided frame by frame, cut by cut, where to look. This felt like a regular action movie. And there are moments that are glorious. It's fun. It'll be great to see on a big screen. 100% do not watch this on a phone or something like that. This is big screen entertainment. Going in and thinking it's a perfectly good action movie, a perfectly good Mad Max film. The Mad Max film we would have expected last time around, and you won't be disappointed. But to think that it lives up to the crazy, crazy results of Fury Road, I think you're going to be a little bit disappointed. And worse, this isn't giving too much away, it overtly has elements of Fury Road where you can contrast directly. And when it does that, I'm watching those sequences having just seen this new film. I'm like, yeah, gotta say, looked a little bit better last time. Furiosa is one of these films that's gonna bring people back to movie theaters, I hope. I think it is wonderful that George Miller is continuing to actually sort of mine this stuff. I got no problem with the film being, it's just when we're dealing with something that is a direct follow-up, so as I say, one of the great films of the age, inevitably you're going to have a little bit of disappointment. I look forward to watching it again with all of that baggage gone and just watching it for what it is, which is a big, rollicking bed of fun with enough narrative interest, enough actual deeper character beats to actually make you interested in the characters and to actually experience the action totally divorced by how they did it or what they were doing and just being enthralled by the fun of it all. For ThatShelf.com, I'm Jason Gorber. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, follow us on social media, and we will see you next video. All the best. Take care.
Big Shelf.